make up for last week, here we are, a minute early, baby.
Pow pow.
You thought 5 o'clock? Try 4:14. Well, we changed it to 4:15. 1 minute early. There you go, you smart asses in the comments. We're here early to talk about wide receivers. It's our last position group. We can wash our hands of this positional rankings and everything else. And we'll have our rankings all done for everybody in the Discord and our positional rankings and all that coming up next week. So make sure to join the Discord and the Patreon. You can get all our grades. We got them all. We're going to compile them all so that way you don't have to go back and listen to every one, but you can if you want to. So today, wide receivers, we're going to do a mock draft on Tuesday. The three of us will get together and we will do that. And yeah, I think we're about ready. We're going to go with the consensus top 6 here. Each list a sleeper. I think reluctantly across the board for all three of us, we'll list a wide receiver sleeper. And I think let's just dive right into it. And Jamie's going to start us off, and it is going to be the Ohio State wide receiver. Let's start off with Jackson Smith and Jigba.
So Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably the most complete. Not probably. I think he's the most complete wide receiver in this group. He has the most diverse skill set, in my opinion. He runs the most diverse route tree. He understands how to get open, understands when he's open, when to sit down, when to extend a route. He's a solid blocker, very physical, very willing blocker in the run game and in the screen game. Ran a lot of crossers, out routes, dig routes, and comebacks from the slot. Early in his career, he was an outlet option. His role expanded a little bit. He became a key third down weapon towards the end of the 2021 season. He's cerebral, I guess, and smooth in everything that he does. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a guy who, when he has the ball in his hands, he picks his way through traffic to get yak. He understands how to use his hands to slap away the press jam. He uses a jab step, stutter step, has really oily hips to get his release from the line of scrimmage. Like I said, good feel for soft spots in the zone. There isn't a lot that he doesn't do well from a skill set perspective. The biggest knock on him really is the lack of speed. He's not a burner. He's not a guy who's going to make a ton of plays down the field. He's going to be your guy who eats up yardage in the middle of the field, short and intermediate routes. He might pop the occasional long pass, but for the most part, he's going to be catching balls in that 0 to 15-yard range, probably make the first guy miss, pick up a few extra yards, and be a good source of yak. And he catches the ball exceptionally well. Great on third down, great in the red zone. A lot of fun to watch. I think he should be, in my opinion, the first wide receiver off the board. Will definitely be one of the first 2 wide receivers off the board. He's not super twitchy or explosive, but he just gets the job done. And he wins with route running and intelligence. For me, I think the floor for Jackson Smith and Jigba is as an elite slot receiver, but I really think he's a guy who can play all 3 wide receiver positions at the next level and have a lot of success. He doesn't need to be protected or hidden. He can create space for himself off of the line of scrimmage, so you don't really have to worry about him against the press jam. I have an 88 on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not quite a first-round grade, but in this class, he's going to wind up being, I think, probably top 10 to 15 in terms of overall grade in this class.
Yeah, we're actually right on. I got the same exact grade. So yeah, high second-round grade, right on the cusp of a first-round grade. I love that he's a tempo setter. He runs his routes with a lot of nuance, which I loved, to create separation, very speed to create leverage. He basically uses every blade of grass to his advantage to find open areas. What I think is kind of getting lost in this, because Zay Flowers has jumped to wide receiver 1 on some rankings. We've seen Jordan Addison jump to wide receiver 1, but it feels like because he didn't play a ton of games this year and he had the hamstring injury, but going back to 2021, he was the best wide receiver and outperformed everybody in that wide receiver group. And it had guys like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson who went high last year. So I think that's kind of getting lost, how good he was when he was fully healthy and had a full season. So, I mean, I think, yeah, the knocks are, like Jamie mentioned, he did play a lot of the majority of his snaps out of the slot, so he could be an elite slot receiver, kind of as a, not his ceiling, but where people might have him. I mean, he was subbed off when they had 1-2 wide receiver sets at times, and not the exceptional athlete, but he's an exceptional route runner. He's going to be a tough wideout to cover on every down. He's not going to run away from everybody or anybody, but he's going to make guys miss in the open field. He's done that throughout his career. Will gain a ton of targets as a safety valve with real soft hands. I've got an 88 too. I think this is the best wide receiver in this class, and I am with it at 21.
Yeah, so I'm super interested to see how this all pans out grade wise, especially with these first few guys, because we're all on the same accord here, grade wise. So as far as Njigba goes, in my eyes, just kind of automatic at finding open voids in the zone. So tremendous spatial awareness, and he has a really good feel before the catch to know what to do immediately after. As stated, I mean, this is the knock. He's not fast, but he is very quick and agile in short areas. So he has this really good burst to kind of create separation, not just at the top of routes, but immediately after he catches the ball. He looks almost like he's fast. It's kind of a fake out. He looks quick as soon as he takes off because he accelerates so smoothly and easily, but then guys track him down pretty quickly if he has any real grass in front of him, so he doesn't get very far, but still quick in short areas. He's kind of the last of a dying breed. Like, who knew wide receivers could actually catch with their hands? Because apparently it's not really much of a thing, particularly in this class. But it was a pleasant experience to actually see a wide receiver do what they should do with all 10 digits. It was actually pretty cool. He understands pacing, and that really lends to his ability at the top of the class in regards to being the top route runner amongst all these guys. It's kind of reminiscent of Keenan Allen in a way, in the way that he does utilize his pacing. He's not super fast, but what he does have is the ability to run routes at like one speed. So even all of his cuts and his breaks, they happen effortlessly, almost without him having to throttle down at all. So it works to his advantage. He doesn't screw around after the catch. He identifies where the defender is, like I said before, and his break, inside or out, is almost automatic. As soon as he catches the ball, he knows exactly which direction he wants to go in. And he attacks the ball at its highest point. And he has the flexibility to bend and contort his body to adjust to the ball in flight. So some of the knocks, I mean, outside of just the speed, is I would say that, again, can't get away from not having top end juice. It's like the bothersome thing about him. He'd be an all around complete player if he was just a little bit faster. Also would have been great to see him more this past season. Both him and Marvin Harrison Jr. on the field at the same time for any real extent would have been illegal. And I feel like we all kind of got robbed out of that. So I'm not sure he's really a physical receiver also. I didn't see him do a whole lot against press, but something about the way that he maneuvers after he catches the ball and the way that he kind of moves around the field lends me to believe that he can probably body guys up, and he won't be afraid of the contact at the next level. Although I'd say he probably leans a little bit more so to the finesse side than physicality. All that said, same exact grade, 88, high second round.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the hands, Craig, because this is a group that doesn't really catch the ball very well overall, particularly with their hands. There's a lot of body catchers. And Njigba is a guy who extends, plucks the ball at its highest point with his hands pretty much every time. And if he can touch it, he's probably going to catch it. There's very few drops, which is something that plagues a lot of the guys in this class. So seeing him catch the ball the way he does, he doesn't have to slow down. He adjusts to the ball really well. He tracks the ball exceptionally well. He had some flashes of making deep plays, but I don't really think it's going to be his thing at the next level. But I mean, if you're looking for a guy who just knows how to get open and catches the ball when he's open, he's your guy. And he's a guy who, I mean, he works back to the ball. He, like I said earlier, he'll cut routes off. He'll sit down in zones. He'll work back to the ball when his quarterback gets in trouble. And he's a demon on third down. Absolute demon on third down. He killed Michigan on third down in the red zone in 2021. Just a weapon in that on money downs.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So across the board, 88, not quite a first round grade for any of us, but a guy we'd all be happy with at 21, I feel, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I love him, especially if you can double back and find someone who has a little bit more twitch later on. Compliment it.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Next up, we got
There's a
Jordan-
question I think we should address here. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Hit it. With the Chargers' aversion to speedy wide receivers and Keenan Allen's cap hit next season, is JSN a lock to be drafted if he's there at 21? I would say 100%.
I think he is. I mean, we know that they've said that he's at a level. I forget what term that they used, but a level unto himself or a tier unto himself or something along those lines. So they love him. Yeah, a tier of his own. He's clearly their number one receiver. So if he's there at 21, I would say probably if he falls past 15, they're probably getting antsy to maybe try to trade up for him, is my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They definitely wouldn't allow that to pass them up at 21. We already know that what that wide receiver room is looking at from a cap, standpoint going into next season. I know that they claim that they want Keenan Allen to kind of be, or at least Tom Telesco claimed that he wanted Keenan Allen to be kind of a lifer as far as the Chargers are concerned. But when you look at the reality of it, unless we're talking about some major moves with contracts again, then they definitely pull the trigger on this, and it would probably signal goodbye to Keenan next year if it already isn't the case.
Feels like you guys are just being a bunch of Jalen Guyton haters is what this really comes down to.
Man, can you say anything negative about Jalen Guyton?
You'll get smoked.
No.
Aren't we all?
Let
we all Jalen Guyton haters? I'm the president of the Jalen Guyton hater club.
He can't even get his name right. That's how little of a
I don't care
about Jalen Guyton. Jalen Guyton Gator Wider.
Come on, man. We all love the speed guy. The speed guy. That's who he is. Speed guy.
There was a rookie of the year moment in there with Jamie, like Button Gardner and Garden Hoser and whatever he was called. All right. So next up here, we'll move off JSN and move on to the next guy here on our list, and it is Jordan Addison. Started his career out at Pitt, but transferred to USC for that NIL deal. Don't blame him for that. But, man, his 20 tape at Pitt was fantastic. I wish I could have just watched that the whole time. Very explosive. He can outrun you both vertically and horizontally. He is a weapon with the ball in his hands. He got manufactured touches in the run game and as a returner. A very strong route runner, too. I think he's got really efficient footwork. Got a well-rounded route tree. He puts DBs at a disadvantage with that acceleration of footwork. And though he doesn't have JSN type hands, he's got pretty good hands. The knocks, of course, are the size, 5'11", 171. And also he ran a 4.49, which is slower than some expected. He is going to be 21 entering the league, so he can definitely pack on some muscle because he does kind of get knocked back in the line of scrimmage against some bigger corners because he is a skinnier wide receiver. Corners definitely want to body him at the line to throw him off track. And I think he's going to need to improve that footwork at the line, too, at the next level. But Jordan Addison has the acceleration, the route running abilities to win right away out of the slot. Plus, he could be a weapon as a ball carrier and a returner. Though he doesn't have the world-class speed, he's got he can gain that top-end speed in an instant as a deep threat. So we'll talk about some of these other guys who are fast, but this is more of an explosive type weapon here in Jordan Addison. I have an 84 on him, which is a mid-second.
Yeah, we're in a similar ballpark. I'm slightly higher on Addison, and you made a point that I was going to make with him, which was his 21 tape was phenomenal. He could score from pretty much anywhere on the field. He was a huge deep threat, would catch balls underneath, make people miss, and get big gains. He's very smart. He's always looking for opportunities to make blocks. And despite his size at 5'11", 171, he's pretty physical as a blocker and pretty effective. He lines up all over the place. Really love the fact that he plays in the slot. He plays outside. You'll see him line up in the backfield, more so with USC than at Pitt. They put him in motion. They throw screens to him. They throw the ball to him deep. They get him in the middle of the field against zone defense and just let him run. He's able to pull away from people at the top of his route. He will stick to people a little bit against the press jam because he is smaller. He has a hard time getting away from more physical coverage. Really, really loose hips and quick, precise feet to gain his release. He freezes defender at the line with jab steps and head fakes. Really no wasted motion in his releases, in my opinion. Runs a complete route tree and pretty much runs everything like a pro already. He and Jigba are probably neck and neck in terms of who the best route runner is in this class, in my opinion. They're just so smooth and they run such great routes. It's really fun to watch them. I thought his 2022 tape was a little disappointing. I was all excited and ready to go, figuring at USC he'd be catching deep balls and be this huge play, big play guy like he was at Pitt. And it just seemed like he never fit in that offense. And I know he had some injury issues in 2022, but it seemed like they really didn't know how to use him. And it seemed like he was like the third or fourth option in a lot of games, just not the consistent playmaker that he was at Pitt. And I don't know if that was something that he was struggling against Pac-12 athletes, or if it was the injury or learning a new system and not really knowing what his role was, but he just didn't look like the same guy. I think the knocks on him are he's not going to be a contested catch guy at 5'11", 171. He isn't physical. He's not a guy who's going to out-jump people and make physical catches in traffic. Any kind of contact at the catch point is a problem for him, even though he has really strong hands. He just gets out-muscled at times at the catch point. There were some issues I thought with separating versus man coverage in the Pac-12. Really effective versus zone. Still can be effective versus man because of his route running and his explosiveness, but it just wasn't as consistent as it was at Pitt. He was a great source of yak in 2021. Still was in 2022, but in a different way. I felt like most of his yak in 2022 was against zone as opposed to making people miss versus man coverage. And he's really flexible, very twitchy, has good vision with the ball in his hands, and is able to find running lanes. Didn't feel like he worked back to the ball as much at USC as he did with Pitt, but he does show the ability to understand when his quarterback is in trouble and work back to the ball. He was just such a consistent deep threat that sometimes it wasn't something that he was in a position to do. Tracks the ball really well. All really strong things. I have an 85 on Jordan Addison. So mid-second round grade, but again, in this class, he's going to wind up being in that first group of 32. And another guy who, in my opinion, at 21 should really be a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. All right, Craig.
Again, very similar here. As far as Addison is concerned, I think I noticed some of the same things as Jamie. It looks like, for me personally, and I didn't use this as a knock against him, it actually helped his cause in the end. Having to play in Pitt's scheme for a few years, worked to his advantage. There was an understanding of the offense between he and the rest of the offense's quarterback. There was that cohesion there, but it didn't really look like they ever really got on the same page at USC. And it was just 1 year. So you're looking at all those guys who came in through transfers, they're playing together for the first time. You got athletes who were really at the top of their class in regards to their positions coming together and just trying to make it work, and like a little bit of a hodgepodge for a year. So I don't think that's a knock against them, as opposed to them just not having the cohesion that he was at Pitt. So I didn't take off points for that, even though his 22 tape was definitely not as impressive as 21, because at Pitt, he was absolutely the man. Jamie and I believe it had to have been before this past college season. We had like some messages back and forth about wide receivers. Addison's name came up, and I think I might have mentioned Zay for the first time there. So we've always kind of both had our eyes on Addison and admired him from that point. As far as what he brings to the field, explosive off the snap at the line of scrimmage. I mean, when he gets a free release, his aggressiveness can force DBs to bail out really early. USC moved him around from X to Z to slot, and he even ran routes out of the backfield. It's been mentioned already, really smooth and easy route runner. There's really no hitch in and out of breaks, which makes him extremely difficult to mirror in coverage. His acceleration out of his breaks can create more space, and it's damn near masterful, especially at the top of his routes. There's smoothness to the breaks that is pretty much only rivaled by Jackson Smith and Jigba. But the reason why it's a little bit more impressive for me is the fact that he can do it without having to slow down. Everything's really fast. Whereas Smith and Jigba has great acceleration out of breaks. Addison's fast throughout, so there isn't really much in the way of having to slow down. He doesn't take many false steps when he's chopping his feet before he goes into his breaks. He was better against press than I expected, and I think it's due to his footwork. Still not great against it. He kind of dances a little bit to avoid being jammed to the line of scrimmage, but it's efficient, so much so that he doesn't throw off the timing between himself and the quarterback. I was also really impressed by some of his contested catch grabs, even though he's really slightly built, but that's not going to be his thing at the next level. He's not the greatest at it, and a lot of it has to do with that slight build. And he's got really great open field vision as a ball carrier. So, and even when you're looking at that 40 time, I think he ran more in the high 4.4s. He looks like he plays faster than that. The deep speed isn't elite, but there's enough to get the job done. So I don't hate that at all. Already mentioned it, the 22 tape, not nearly as impressive as 21. He had a few concentration drops this past year. It wasn't many. I think it was just like 2, but collectively I think he had like 21 drops over 2 years at Pitt, which kind of weird. So I'm sorry, maybe I got that wrong. Was it 21 Pitt 21? Yeah, it's 21 drops in 2 years, unless that was wrong. It blew my mind when I saw it. So if that's wrong, sorry, it's what I found when I looked it up. But it looks like he's pretty much fully exercised those demons with only 2 just last year. So I don't think that'll be a problem moving forward. He doesn't really possess that elite top 5th gear, like I said, so he probably won't be what I call a 5 to 50 guy. So someone who can create a game-breaking explosive play by just kind of hitting the turbo button, blow by guys after he catches the ball on any quick routes, any outs, hitches, things of that nature. And the one other question I have against him is I want to know how he's going to play against guys that are really technically sound with length. Because he's such a great technician and he wins a lot that way, all that's fine and good. But when he goes against somebody who has a little bit more reach than him, who isn't relying on athleticism, he may be played to a stalemate, but we'll see. I didn't see a lot of that at USC last year, but it's just something I'm curious about. Overall, one of the guys that if he were to fall to the Chargers at 21, I'd be fine with. We know he's not my guy overall, but I would still be perfectly fine with it. And I have the same grade as Garrett, 84.
84?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
What's that? The second player this year that I was higher on than you guys?
Might have been
2.
Is that only? I think it is only the second.
Who was the other one?
There was one on the last show. I don't remember who it was.
Huh. Okay. All right. So there's going to be a question here that I want to get to real quick before I put up the grades. Okay. So Chargers Berries wants to know before we get off Addison and move on to Zay Flowers. What do you guys feel? What do you all think of the notion that Addison would be redundant to some people in this wide receiver room? I'm not sure I'm buying it completely. Name me a wide receiver the Chargers currently have that does what Addison does. Can anybody?
No. I'm thinking.
So
I don't
know where that comes from.
There are elements to this game as far as like a route runner is concerned. If you want to compare like the explosiveness in the route running to like a Palmer off the line of scrimmage, they're similar in that way. And then like the preciseness as a route runner, if we want to talk Keenan, but no one wide receiver on that roster has everything that he has collectively. I really don't see that anywhere with anyone, unless Guyton's that guy, since we all seem to be underselling him.
Wait, you got the president of the haters club here. Don't talk about Guyton.
Man,
he's on here.
I don't think he's redundant. I think, if you look at the route running, maybe you look at the route running and say, oh, he's going to have to play from the slot because he's little, and maybe you compare him to Keaton a little bit, I guess, maybe. But I think that's not very good analysis, in my opinion. Let me ask you guys this. Where do you think he fits in terms of slot, X, Z? Where do you guys think his best fit is? Because I have a very specific idea of where I think he should be. I'm just wondering what you guys think.
Craig?
I'd rotate him between Z and slot. And I'd probably get him a little bit of work, same way that USC utilized him out of the backfield just a little bit. But he'd be a rotating Z and slot guy for me.
God, man, I was hoping you'd pick one. Yeah, I would have done the same exact thing. Yeah, he's a rotational guy for me.
I see him primarily as a Z personally. I think you give him that extra cushion behind the line of scrimmage and give him a little extra room to work into his route and chew up some cushions. And I think he'd be deadly. And I think you can move him around too. But I think he'd be a very high level Z at the next level.
Yeah, and quite honestly, a really good fit for the Chargers, in my mind. Yeah, this is. We'll talk about kind of the big four that's been mocked to the Chargers, and we'll get on into that in a little bit. But let's move on to our next guy here. Craig, you get to start it off with Zay Flowers.
Oh, me? I get to talk about Zay?
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Who knew? I totally have nothing prepared for this at all.
Oh, props.
So
He's got props.
For you guys out there that are listening to this and on the audio adventure, I'm holding up the classic Flash Funko Pop. And that is who I would compare Zay Flowers to on the football field. 3-level wide receiver that can run the entire route tree, 0 to 9. So yes, I'm going to gush, guys. So definitely prepare yourselves. But most of you out there already knew this. He put on 13 pounds of muscle between the end of his last season at BC, at Boston College, and the combine, and he still ran a 4.42. So whenever I see people out there complaining about, oh, well, he's not as fast as I thought he was. Well, just imagine adding 13 more pounds of mass and still running a low 4.4. Think about what his actual play weight is, and then kind of translate that to how much faster he's probably going to be if he's playing somewhere in the mid 170s. So, I mean, outside of that, he played over 60% of his snaps on the perimeter last year. So the fact that there are a lot of people who are saying that he's only going to be a slot guy, I don't necessarily believe that. I feel like he can play the slot and be extremely dangerous there, but he can play some Z too. I'm not going to put him on the line of scrimmage as an X, but definitely Z and slot. But I'm not just going to pigeonhole him in the slot, because to me, ultimately, he's a weapon. You can move him around everywhere. Simple to me. He's fantastic at threatening DBs vertically and forcing them to open their hips and commit to one side, and then he's setting them up to run his route to that opposite side. So he gets guys to open their gate and overcommit, and then you just see him running in the blind spots, and he's almost wide open every time it happens because nobody's quick enough to turn their hips and recover. They almost have to do a full turn the opposite direction, and by then they're actually losing ground because they have to take additional steps and then work back towards the ball. So he's really good at getting open that way. He also helps to create natural separation for first and second level routes, so that short and intermediate, because of the way he explodes off of the line of scrimmage. Those deep threats, or the way that he threatens vertically, assists him in everything underneath. And so I hear this, I've heard this a few times, it's actually a little annoying. He's not a true vertical threat. Well, right. He's more than that. Your true vertical threat is Jalen Guyton, and that's all Guyton is. But the fact that Zay is so effective at like the first and second levels, it makes him more dangerous deep down the field, because you have to respect everything in the short and intermediate side of the field. So yeah, he can do a little bit of all of that. He's really loose and fluid in and out of breaks, particularly with double moves, because he doesn't really have to throttle down like most receivers do. Got a low center of gravity. So when we're talking about sitting down in a chair on like a pump and go, when it looks like he's stopping the run, it'll either be a hitch and go, pump and go from the quarterback, or maybe like a 9-stop or a 9-stop and go. He sits down in the chair, his feet patter like twice, and you see the DB commit, and he just roasts them straight past him. And there's no catching him once he accelerates, because he's at top speed in like 2 to 3 steps. Electric after the catch. And that's kind of where the fun starts. Any touch anywhere on the field can result in 6 points. And so again, when you ask yourself, what do the Chargers not have in regards to a playmaker, this is kind of the archetype and the person that personally I would want for them. I think that goes without saying. All around weapon, like I said, you can run him out of the slot or at Z, out of the backfield. There's also return value there. Is everything perfect? No. His hands are iffy. Yeah, he's had 24 drops over 4 years at Boston College. He won't offer you a lot, if anything, as a blocker, unless he's just running a DB out of the play. I saw a few good snaps against press coverage, but not enough to say he'll be consistent at it. So he's also made a few really nice catches in traffic, but he's definitely not a contested catch guy. He tries to play bigger, but just can't consistently compensate for his small catch radius. So, I mean, there's no secret my feelings about Zay Flowers and how much I would really, really love for him to be a Charger. So if that happens, then I guess I manifested it, or however that works. So, my grade on Zay is an 85. Got him as a mid-second rounder.
All right, Jamie, you're muted. So whenever you want to get back.
Sorry,
on.
I was coughing and wanted to mute it. Yeah, Zay is a super fun watch. I agree with pretty much everything Craig said. I love. He's not a super efficient route runner right now in terms of being polished, like say an Addison is or a JSN is, but he turns guys with ease. He attacks leverage. Like Craig said, he'll set them up to break in an opposite direction, attack leverage, lean into them, and then break outside. And he's so sudden and fluid with his hips that once he makes that cut, he's gone. And he's creating huge amounts of separation at the top of his routes consistently. He wins in the middle of the field. He wins to the boundary. He can win down the field. He can be a nice gadget tool in terms of catching, manufactured touches with swing passes and screen passes and things of that nature. He gets open all over the field. I thought he was a little bit better blocker than Craig mentioned. I thought there were some instances where he showed a good feel for getting guys turned, setting up his blocks, creating angles, and getting guys turned out of running lanes. And he'll look to make downfield blocks at times in the running game. And he really understands how to create yak once he gets the ball in his hand at all levels of the field. He's that guy who he can make somebody miss and take it, take a slant, a 5-yard slant, 60 yards in a heartbeat. I think the other thing too about him is he is, he's a definition of explosive, but when he's in the open field, he bends in ways that a human body should not be able to bend. He's like a contortionist. He'll be running full speed. Somebody will dive at him, and it's like his hips just pop out of position, slide out of the way. He makes the guy miss, and he turns upfield as soon as the guy misses, and he's gone for an extra 10 yards. He does things with his body that no other player on the Chargers can do. Just his ability to make people miss. He doesn't have to stop. He can stop. He can string moves together. He can do that if he needs to, but he doesn't have to make you miss in the open field. And he'll stop and cut and hit that top speed in 2 or 3 steps, and he's gone. It's amazing. I'd like to add to this that the quarterback that he was catching passes from for the last 2 years, what's his name? Phil Yurovich, something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That dude is a fucking terrorist. He's
Phil
terrible.
Jesus.
Gorovich, whatever. He's a terrorist. That guy, if he costs a 1 catch and 10 yards, he cost him probably 30 catches and another 400 or 500 yards this year alone.
Future Uber driver.
Yeah.
He is terrible. He missed him. Zay would be wide open 15, 20 yards downfield, and he just wouldn't see him. It was like he was completely blind. It was awful. But I hear what Craig is saying about the drops, and it is a problem. There can be concentration drops. I wouldn't be surprised if there were situations where he was surprised that the ball got to him, based on the level of quarterback play. I also would not be terribly. There were so many passes that probably were considered drops because he got a hand on them or got 2 hands on them that were so far out of his catch radius that you really couldn't expect him to catch the ball. They were so bad.
I just didn't want to sound like I was gobbling him up too much. So
yeah. There were some concentration drops, and there are some issues with him trying to body catch at times. For the most part, I think he tries to catch the ball with his hands, and he does a pretty good job of it for the most part. Everybody's going to drop some passes. But I think a lot of that goes away with a functional quarterback who isn't, the R slurred. That guy was terrible.
What are we doing, Jamie?
Having fun. Is that okay?
This is going to go off the rails soon.
Yeah,
I can feel it. Oh, wait. Let me throw this in there really quickly. So for you kids out there, and also I'm dating myself, if you don't know who Peter Warwick is, you don't even have to go and look up, don't watch full games. Just go to the highlights. Type in Peter Warwick. The movement skills are reminiscent of Peter Ward, but with like a turbo jetpack tied to him.
So I think if you're looking for knocks on him, obviously the drops are an issue. The route running still has some room for growth, even though he's already a pretty good, a pretty good route runner. I think there's room for growth there. The catch radius, I think, because he's small, is going to be limited. He'll make contested catches, but I'm not really sure that's the role that you want him in. Like Craig said, probably not somebody you want lining up on the line of scrimmage as an X. He's another guy who's going to kill people in the slot and will have a lot of success as a Z at the next level. And he's another utility guy who you can move around a lot like Addison and get a lot out of him, out of the backfield, out of the slot, out of the Z. He can provide so many different options for you. So I'm a little higher on Zay. I'm at an 86, but early to mid second round grade, and again, easily one of the top probably 20 players in this class, without a doubt.
Yeah. How did Jamie outgrade you?
I don't know. I feel like I failed you, Zay.
Yeah, you really did. I especially because I'm with Jamie. We both have him graded higher than you did, and he's your boy. Somehow we did that. So let's talk about it because Craig ain't shit, apparently. If he's got an 85, we got No, but I mean, so you guys talked about Zay Flowers. I hadn't even started my wide receiver watch by the time you guys were talking about wide receivers, because you guys started we're talking way early in the process, during halfway through the college season. You guys were talking about Flowers, and so I hadn't watched him. Addison was kind of my guy, only because I had watched a couple of games from him, liked what I saw, and I was expecting Addison to way overtake Zay Flowers, and he did not. Zay Flowers was ranked higher on my board now than Jordan Addison. He is just a fun watch. The things that I love about him, outside of the stuff you guys already mentioned, winning off the line of scrimmage, man, he is so good at the line of scrimmage, and he's so good at the top of the routes. Two keys for a wide receiver, and I think those are NFL ready right away. There's no wasted movement. Flowers is always flying around the field, and also just on him in Boston College, he was the best ball player on the field in those gotta have it moments when they needed him during big play moments. He was the guy they went to late in games, and he always delivered. He was huge, a big playmaker for Boston College. And we talked about the Yak already, a guy that can beat you vertically, horizontally. Something we haven't mentioned yet is the size. 5'9", 182. That's kind of been his big knock so far, but his size, he does not play to his size. There's a bigger guy here that plays smaller than his size that we'll talk about in a little bit. Zay Flowers plays much bigger than 5'9", 182. Where it does block, where it does hurt him, and I actually agree with Craig here, is as a blocker. I think at times he can get swallowed up by bigger guys, and I think that size hurts him a little bit. And listen, the quarterback sucked. He did have 9 drops last year and 20, what'd you say, 25, 24 in 4 years?
Yeah.
There has been some consistency issues there, but honestly, Zay Flowers would be utilized best in a motion-based system, in an offense, getting him moving in space, play off his strengths where he can create in the open field. He really, to me, is a guy you can plug and play in any offensive system, because that route running is great right away. Probably going to be a Z at the next level, but the only thing in my mind holding him back is the size. But the one thing about the size is he does not play to that size. He might get bodied up to bigger, longer corners in the NFL. That could happen from time to time, but that's not going to happen consistently. Zay Flowers is a dog, and he's a guy I've got obviously an 86 on, as you saw the grade, but he was very, very good. And I was very happy with Zay Flowers, and I'm with you guys. He's in my boat at 21 easy if he falls to the Chargers. Flash.
I'm telling you, if you take this kid and you put him at Ohio State, or you put him in Alabama, or you put him in any offense with an elite quarterback, or even like a slightly above average quarterback, this kid is 100 catch, 14 to 1,500 yards, 15 to 20 touchdowns in his sleep, maybe more. That his quarterback cost him so many catches and yards and touchdowns. It was
Disgusting.
painful.
And he was born on 9/11, Kim said. You called his quarterback a terrorist. What about this tie-in? But look at Charger Berries. Is this the average of all of our scores? Seems
Yeah, it
like
is.
it.
Mm.
Great job. Keep doing that. I love that. All right. So let's move on to the next one here. Let's talk about the fourth one of the big four being mocked to the Chargers at 21. Thank you, Chargers Berries, for the averages. We are talking about Quentin Johnston. Jamie, give it to us.
Okay, so Johnston is
an interesting start. Okay.
I was
I know
trying
where
to
this is
find
going.
my notes.
No, I don't think so.
No, I was. I swear.
We'll see.
All right. So Johnston is the guy who everybody was raving about after his bowl game against Michigan, because he's 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds. He has that huge, the hot potato grenade. I love it, Stanley. He has that huge wingspan. He has the huge catch radius. He has the speed, the frame, everything you look for on the surface from an NFL wide receiver. He has all of the traits. He is the traits guy in this draft. And if you are absolutely, if you're hooked on traits, if you're a team that is looking only to draft traits, then he's the guy for you. However, if you are looking for a wide receiver who plays to his frame, if you're looking for a wide receiver who catches the ball with his hands, especially as a deep ball, potential jump ball threat, that kind of thing, Johnston is not for you. He's a little bit frustrating to watch because of his size. He should be so much more physical than he is, and it's a little frustrating. But let's talk about the good things. I think you saw on tape as you watch Johnston, his ability to track the ball down the field once it's in the air it has improved year to year. You can tell he finds the ball quickly. He has good body control. He's able to adjust to the ball in the air. He'll contort his body on occasion and make catches down the field. Those are all good things. He does have the speed. He was a very good source of yak. He's a guy who he has a go-to move. He knows where the defender's coming from. He'll throw a little head and shoulder fake in one direction, turn in the other direction, and give you 5 to 10 yards of yak. I've seen numbers going around in our Discord that he's powerful. I'm not really sure that I would use the word powerful to describe Quentin Johnston. He'll make guys miss. I feel like if you get him on the hip, if you get him on the leg, he's probably going to go down. But if he has space to operate and make his move, he's going to make you miss and get you some extra yards. He was a great source of big plays down the field. He's a terrific weapon for stretching the field. He killed zone defenses, absolutely killed zone defenses on slants and drags. Did not see a whole lot of press coverage for him. So we're not really sure how he's going to handle that. I've seen some numbers saying he handled it well, but I think I watched eight or nine of his games, and I couldn't tell you a single snap that I remembered out of press coverage. Also, a big knock for me, and I know you don't scout the uniform, you don't scout the conference, but defense is optional in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And he played in the Big 12, and he was not playing against corners who were anywhere near his level of athlete, and he was not playing against defenses that were willing to body him up. So he had room to operate. And that obviously worked to his advantage. Let's see. What else do we have here? Let's go to some of the knocks. So we talked about the frame. We talked about the catch radius and the speed. What drives me crazy about Quentin Johnston is at 6'2", 200 pounds, I feel like he plays like a guy who's 5'9", 180 pounds. Mm-hmm. He does not high point the ball, in my opinion, really at all. You'll see it flash on occasion. But a lot of plays down the field where he's looking to cradle the ball against his chest, and he's allowing corners to get into his frame and break passes up down the field because he is not high pointing it and he's not catching it with his hands. He has a tendency to box the ball when he tries to catch the ball with his hands. Other things that really drove me crazy for a guy his size is if you watch him on dig routes, slant routes, anything over the middle of the field where he's anticipating a tight window where a safety's coming down or a linebacker's crashing down on him, he will alligator on the ball. He will cut routes off. He will pull up short and he will let the ball fall. At the NFL level, he got away with it in the Big 12 because, again, defense is optional. At the NFL level, if you're cutting off routes on slants and digs, those are pick sixes. You can't get away with that at the NFL level. So I'm really mixed on Quentin Johnston. I think there's talent there. He's obviously a phenomenal athlete. The hands are a problem for me. The body catching, as everybody knows, body catching is a huge issue for me with wide receivers. I can't stand it. And I just feel like I hesitate to use the word. I really don't want to use it, but I'm just going to use it. I feel like in some instances, he's a little soft in the way that he approaches tight windows in the middle of the field. I know there are a lot of clips of him catching drag routes and slant routes underneath his own defense and just turning and running upfield all day long. And that's great. But when he's seeing press coverage, when he's seeing a lot of man coverage, he's going to see some double teams too against actual capable defenders. And he starts cutting off routes and alligator arming balls. That's a problem. So he is. I have an 84 on Quentin Johnston. He is towards the back of the top of the big four, quote unquote, in this class. Not super low on him, not as high as a lot of people, just really concerned about the lack of physicality for a guy his size. And I think a lot of those yak numbers are kind of misleading, a lot like what we talked about with Dalton Kincaid. The number of catches he's making in the middle of the field against zone defense and just running to daylight. Not sure that's going to be something that he's going to see a lot of at the NFL level. So kind of a tough grade for me, but I ended up on an 84.
Greg, how you feeling?
So I'm going to end up being a big bad wolf here because I agree with Jamie. It was really... It's kind of depressing watching him because I expected so much more. You see so many big time games of TCU on TV, nationally televised, and you see him make these big plays and you catch ESPN highlights and you just think, man, this dude he's different. And from an athletic standpoint, you see it, but it's not consistent and he doesn't play to someone his size. It's super frustrating. I mean, as far as what's good, he absolutely swallows up cushion against off coverage because he has these really long, powerful strides, and it puts DBs in compromising situations as far as technique is concerned. He's actually got pretty good short area quickness and burst for someone of his height. TCU moved him around a bunch too, put him in motion across the formation, gave him the ball on jet sweep. So he was accustomed to being the man and getting the ball in his hands to make plays in several different ways. He's aggressive with his run after the catch as a receiver, but there's a flip side to it. It actually is one of the reasons why he has so many issues with drops, because you can see on film that he's looking to make a move before he actually catches the ball. So that's where the issue comes with concentration. It's almost mechanical. He's thinking 2 steps ahead before he does the most important thing. So he can't operate in that way. He doesn't have very good feel. He has to see it first, and you can just kind of see it like he's thinking it through. And then in all of that processing, he forgets to actually catch the ball. There'll be instances where the ball literally travels through both of his hands and hits him in the face or in the chest. It's disgusting. So when he tries to catch with his hands, it's a crapshoot. And then the other times he's just allowing the ball into his body. Again, as far as trying to catch the ball with their hands, this is a really frustrating class, and he just kind of falls right in line. He's stiff on routes that require him to make super sharp breaks, and that might be because of his length. So he struggles to sink his hips and not overly chop his feet before he gets out in the breaks. The dude's arms are too long, his hands are too large, and his overall frame is too much of an advantage for him to be so, and is the key word, soft. I have it in my notes too, especially in the middle of the field. The aggressiveness he plays with after the catch is a far cry from what he displays when he's in contested catch situations or attempting to catch the ball over the middle of the field. Ironically enough, most people probably see him as an X. To me, because I noticed there are some issues when he does play against press because he comes off the line of scrimmage so high that his chest is exposed and DBs can get into him and throw off his route timing. He might be better served playing Z because he's used to moving around a bunch and it gives him the additional space to operate, and he can get to the second level and third, and it gives him more space to move around because I don't think he's going to be all that great getting off a press at the next level because he's just not an overly physical guy for someone who's 6'2" and change and over 200 pounds. So I'm a little bit lower than Jamie. I have him with a low second. I got him at an 82.
Greg, you and I are the same here. Yeah. And so, I mean, we're all seeing the same thing. We're watching the same guys. But, you know, we've talked about for years on this podcast before even Craig got here about players playing too small, body catching and alligator arming and short arming balls. And this is the antithesis of the guy that we have stayed away from for a long time. So, you know, the desired speed and size is awesome. I know there's going to be teams that are going to want to build on that. He really is. I mean, watching him play, he's more of a long strider as he's running to create space for yards after the catch. The catch radius is amazing. Like Craig talked about, the big hands, the long arms, and honestly, we haven't mentioned it yet, but I think the route tree is pretty developed as well. I think he's a pretty good route runner. And speaking of bad quarterbacks, he had a bad one too. But to me, just being so slow off the line of scrimmage, being so big, body catching too many balls, which led to way too many drops. And, you know, I was really excited to see him play against Georgia, and he absolutely disappeared in his biggest game of his career. And his production, quite honestly, was all over the place. He was kind of hot and cold in a lot of these games. He wasn't a go-to weapon anytime they needed it. And when they really needed it against Georgia, he was nowhere to be found. So, yeah, I mean, would you say an X? You think he's going to be an X, Craig?
No, I think I think people are just assuming that he's going to be an X. I think he's probably a better fit as a Z because he lacks that physicality and he comes off the line of scrimmage so high. Yeah.
And he's used to runways. He's used to big cushions.
Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of people project him as an X, and I think he's a Z too. So I think there's some versatility there where you might be able to slip him inside as an X, but I see him more as a Z. I think there is some yard after the catch ability at his size, which is great, but I don't think it's as advertised. And I think the drops were a concern. I have an 82, like the Craig did, which is Jamie. Here you go. Another one you've got rated higher than the rest of us.
You're on a run. You're on a run, man.
I thought I was going to be way low on him.
No.
You mentioned his route running. I don't know how you felt, Craig. I didn't think his routes were all that great. I thought there was a lot of rounding of his routes, and I thought it was a pretty limited tree. He runs like maybe 4-5 routes: out, dig, drag, go.
I saw 4 to 5. Yeah, and I think I mentioned it too. At the top of his routes, like when he's coming out of the stem of his routes, he rounds things off because I don't know if it's a thing because he has long limbs. He has trouble breaking down and sinking his hips, but he almost always overstrides on his breaks. And I think that's another one of the things that allows DBs to kind of get inside to get the balls. It allows him to make up space. He's not super precise, so he'll take way too many steps right before his break. He'll round things off. It'll take him a second to kind of break down in the zones. So yeah, I don't think he's a great route runner at all. And as far as the route tree is concerned, I think I saw maybe 5 or 6 somewhere in between there. He doesn't run all 9, not all 9 base routes.
Oh, all right. We differ on that for sure then. All right. So with the averages here, we've got JSN at an 88, Zay with 85.67, Addison with an 84.67, and Quentin Johnston with an 83. So these are the 4 guys that have kind of being mocked to the Chargers. Are we saying this is the order we want them in? Because this is what I was going to say. This is the exact order I want. If they're available, this is my top 4. You guys?
For me,
yeah, you're good.
For me, I mean, I'd be thrilled if they got JSN. I think I would probably put Zay ahead of JSN because of team needs, because of what the wide receiver room looks like right now and what they need. But I mean, JSN gives you so many options in terms of what to do with Keenan next year. I mean, he's an instant Keenan replacement, which is pretty hard to come by. And he's a guy who would step in. He'd probably pass Joshua Palmer on the depth chart as wide receiver 3 almost as soon as he set foot in the door, which would be great. I just think he's the one who is most likely to help take the offense to the next level because he provides a dimension that nobody else provides.
Yeah. Literally Jamie takes the words out of my mouth. It's the same thing. I have a higher grade on Jackson Smith and Jigba, of course, but as far as fit is concerned, Zay's the guy for me. Just looking at what he would mean to Herbert. I know everyone's thinking about him gunning the ball 50 and 60 yards down the field, but what if he doesn't have to do that for explosive plays to happen? What if he can throw the ball on a 5-yard hitch, on a 3-step quick slant, and someone can house it from 60 to 70 yards and do the rest of the work for him? All of the stats are going to show up on paper the same way. So to me, I think he's just a piece. Again, Jamie said it. He's what the offense doesn't have. Whereas JSN, you could use him, you can utilize him in the offense still this year, but there are some redundancies there. And until they get an actual creator of a playmaker, they're still going to be lacking in the offense, and it can still work to Herbert's detriment.
Wow. I bring Craig on here, and all he does is sit with Jamie and agree with him so I can be teamed up on, and I can get bullied on this podcast. That would be
my grades are lower. Some of my grades have been lower. What do you mean? We got the same grades. Some of
ridiculous.
Us. Yeah, we got what?
No, I'm just kidding.
82?
I like having that little tiebreaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm on JSN. I understand what you guys are saying, and I he's not going to be there. I don't believe he's going to be there at 21. And I think it'd be great if he was, but. Yeah, Zay Flowers, in terms of adding the extra dimension that Herbert needs to this offense, it's Zay and Addison. Quentin Johnston would just be fine. I would not love it because I think there's a lot more redundancy with QJ than there is with JSN. But yeah, I think Zay definitely adds a new wrinkle, but I think JSN is number 1 for me.
I think now is a good time also because we've talked about it in reference to who we take at 21 to talk about in a little bit more detail about what the Chargers need, because I think the overriding opinion is that they need speed.
Mm-hmm.
And while that's certainly true, Craig talked about it on I Got 5 this week. We've been talking about it for months, actually years.
I was going to say years.
Yeah, like 3 or 4 years. It's more than just speed. Speed is oversimplification. They need twitch and explosiveness. And I've heard Craig explain this. I think we should let him take the floor and explain it, and we can kind of add on. But what's the difference between speed and twitch and explosiveness? And why is the twitch and explosiveness more valuable than the speed for this Chargers room based on the way the wide receiver room is currently constructed?
Yeah, so I mean, we can just take it from what we already know, what currently exists. A lot of people were really happy to see Guyton resign because they have this concept of, the team missing speed. So they automatically think about him running go balls and Herbert bombing the ball 60 and 70 yards. Well, yeah, that's speed to threaten teams vertically, but then that's only one dimension. Teams know exactly what to expect when they see Guyton on the field, especially in situations where the Chargers have to have a big play. They know that he's not a guy who's going to take a bubble screen or someone who's going to run a quick slant and then expose the middle of the field, like leaving guys in their wake, specifically because he's fast in a straight line, but he has build-up speed. He's not someone who's fast in every direction. A guy like Zay Flowers is exactly the polar opposite. He's fast everywhere. He can take any ball at any position on the field and turn it into an explosive play. So you've given options there. It behooves the Chargers to have one of each guy. You can have someone that can stretch the field vertically, and that be his primary thing to open up things underneath. And you can have someone who may be like a step or so slower if we're talking about overall straight line speed, but is explosive everywhere else and create in the short areas to affect the first and second quadrant of the field. So yes, there's a very real difference between someone who's very, very fast in a straight line and someone who's twitchy, who's able to create on their own in short areas and still create big plays. Jalen Guyton doesn't fit the bill for the latter. He gives you one thing and one thing only, whereas Zay Flowers, or a guy like Zay Flowers. Me personally, I think Zay is kind of the only person exactly like him in this draft. Is someone that gives you multiple options. Is fast, but is also quick and explosive in every direction and can create on his own. So he's not a one-trick pony. And to me, someone like that is very useful in an offense that struggles to create big explosive plays unless the run game is going and it can utilize play action to create deep shots. You don't need that with a guy like Zay or someone who has his skill set.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that ability to take that 5 or 7 yard pass and maybe turn it into a 15 or 20 yard play or more is something this offense has been missing for a while. And I think if you can find somebody who can give you not just speed, but the ability to run routes at an efficient level or even an elite level, and be explosive in every direction, it just adds an element that few offenses in this league have. And it's a big reason why, for example, the Chiefs have been so explosive offensively for so long, because they value not just speed, but explosiveness. And the Chargers, I think if you ask them, they would tell you they have 2 elite possession type receivers in Mike and Keenan. Not sure I agree with that take, but I think that's what they would tell you. And they need something to offset that, something to counterbalance that. Guyton is not that. They need somebody who can run routes and be explosive in their routes and after the catch with the ball in their hands. And that's why I think you could even make an argument. I mean, Zay is the guy, in my opinion, but I think you could even make an argument if let's say, you get to 21 and Zay and QJ and Addison are all on the board. You could make a really strong argument for either Addison or Zay. And you could even make an argument for Addison or Zay over JSN because of what they offer. Not sure I would take Addison over GSM, but I think an argument could be made because of the things that he does on the field, which are so different from what anybody else in the wide receiver room does.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. I'm glad we got through that, and it's a segue here to guys who just is fast, and we were talking about being one-dimensional. So let's move on to this next guy, Jalen Hyatt. So,
yay.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's got real speed as a field stretcher. It all starts with that burst off the line of scrimmage. He is very good in the deep part of the field, tracks the ball well, makes some tough catches in traffic at times. His hands are strong at the catch point. He can create after the catch. His change of direction helps him in the open field at times. He ran a few variety of routes at Tennessee, not a full tree, but I really think it needs to improve at the top of his routes. I don't think he's got a lot of good breaks. It feels like he rounds off a lot of routes because he's just in his mind trying to go fast and get open as quick as he can. He ran most of his routes out of the slot because of his size. He's 6 foot 176, and he has the top end speed to be a home run hitter. He's got pretty good hands, but really, to me, Jalen Guyton is a one-dimensional wide receiver in my mind. His slender size is going to limit him, and I think the acceleration will help in the NFL. But there was a comp earlier, I think it was, and I don't know who made it, but there was a comp to Jalen Guyton and Devin Smith, the Ohio. Huh?
Oh, okay. No, Devin Smith. Okay.
Yeah, the Ohio State. And so I completely understand it. He's got that straight line speed, but there isn't a ton. There's a little bit after the catch, but the routes need. He's got issues running his routes. He's a little skinny. I've got a 75 on him, which is a mid-third. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who might hate that because he was in that top 4, and a lot of people were happy about him. Even at 21, now they're okay with him in the second round. While I understand that could be okay, I just feel like this is a one-dimensional set him on his way and go route type of player, and I just don't feel like this is a guy you can take in the first round. I think in the second round, it feels a little the value isn't there just because you're going to have to build off of a go route. And I don't think he's got a ton after that. I know because he's fast, he can take the ball and run, but I don't think there's enough there. And we had just talked about Jalen Guyton being fast on a line. Jalen Hyatt is the same way. He has got that Jalen Guyton game in him. While he's going to be a better player in the NFL than Jalen Guyton, I believe. I am out on Jalen Hyatt, who I think I've probably called Jalen Guyton a couple times during this breakdown accidentally. Freudian slip. But I was excited for this watch, disappointed at the end. It's a 75 for me. It's a mid-third round grade. I'm curious to see if you guys are in the same ballpark or not, but lower on Hyatt than most, I think. And also second best wide receiver on his team, which we can get to later. But go ahead, at Tennessee. Go ahead. Craig, you give your grade. What do you got here?
Okay, so I'll just get through the specifics. It won't take me long, trust me. So disgusting long speed, of course, we know it. His top gear is on another stratosphere. So like, I don't recall anyone running step for step with him for more than like 6 to 8 yards. So yeah, there's that. There's no amount of cushion that can be considered safe against him. His build-up speed is super deceptive, and I think that's what helped him beat so many guys deep, because people assume that if they gave him 5 to 7 yards, they'd be able to open their gate and run with him. They didn't realize how much he was creeping up on them as he went along, which actually kind of speaks to his 40 time. People were expecting this dude to run like high 4.2s, low 4.3s, but he has build-up speed, and you can see it when you watch it on tape. His first, and even if you go back and look at the 10 and 20 yard splits in his 40, the 10-yard split and the 20-yard split, there's a pretty big gap, and he really opens up at about 25 yards. So right around the 20-25 yard mark is when it's just pretty much a wrap. So he's faster than that low 4.4. He absolutely is. He just doesn't have the speed built to run a 40, because he doesn't accelerate as fast as you need to run a great 40 yard. It's really kind of all about the start in the first 20 yards, and if you can maintain it. He separates pretty much effortlessly out of his breaks on 2 routes, on 7s and 8s. And for people who don't know what those are, 7s are corners and 8s are posts, because when he sticks his foot into the ground, whatever direction he's going in, he stabs his foot and he propels himself off of it. So he's already at full speed, and he takes this really strong, powerful step. It can be a false step in one direction or another, but he doesn't really lose any momentum, and he creates additional separation from there. He tracks the ball over his shoulder really, really well. I mean, as far as the knocks, I mean, he's only got 1 real year of production that came by way of a really super unconventional, like spread stack tempo offense. At the next level, I'll put it this way. The next time he faces press and beats it, it'll be the first, because I've not seen it at all. I watched a little bit of the 21 tape, and he didn't face a ton of it. And when he did, I mean, he's pretty much taken out of the play. And last season, he was always put in positions to where he didn't have to. Heupel understood who he was, and he made the most out of his skill set. And I mean, kudos to him for being able to do that. I counted him running maybe 4 routes, maybe. And 2 of them were the 7s and 8s. So, I mean, as far as developing a route tree at the next level, it's going to be a necessity, because, I mean, yeah, you can be one of the faster cats on the field, but the offense that you're going to be in the NFL is not going to resemble that of Tennessee. So you're going to have to learn how to get off of the line of scrimmage and create separation other ways, other than having, formations where you're stacked with one guy on top of you with these super wide splits, or you're coming across the formation and getting running starts with like 7-8 yards of cushion before you're on the DB can get in your pocket. It's not going to be a thing in the NFL. You're going to have to figure out how to get around press coverage at some point. And again, I think I mentioned it's like, while his top speed is elite, he does need a runway to get there. So nah, Jamie, I'm sorry. Actually, Garrett, you're not alone in this. My grade is exactly the same. I have a 75.
All right, Jamie, you got to get ahead of us or below us?
I'm below you, not by much, but a little. So all is right in the world. We're back to normal. I mean, you guys said it all. I think the thing that stood out for me with Hyatt is it seemed like he faced more 8 to 12 yard cushions in the slot than any receiver I've ever seen in any college offense ever. And so he had the room to get to his build-up speed and run by people. Craig said it. He runs maybe 4 routes. Really, it's more or less a go. He'll run the occasional slant, but it's almost always under a huge cushion to the point where the DB has no chance to make a play on it. He'll run a curl again against an 8 to 12 yard cushion. So he'll drive upfield and come back as the quarterback's bailing, or as the corner is bailing. Not really having to do that against physical press coverage. Any kind of contact during his route or at the catch point completely derails him. He'll actually stop routes and start complaining and looking for flags if he gets touched at the top of his route. Just not really a fan. I think he's so limited as a route runner. There's no physicality. If you make contact with him at all, hip, leg, arm, ankle, whatever, he's going down. There are times where the body control is kind of problematic, where he'll get out over his skis in his route stem and lose balance and fall. I didn't really see much in the way of contested catches, mainly because he's always facing an 8 to 12 yard cushion. So there just wasn't much of opportunity for contested catches. The yak is fine. He'll make you miss in the open field. He's got a little bit of wiggle. Not going to break many tackles, though, in my opinion. I have a 74 on Jalen Hyatt-Guyton. He is flashy SEC Jalen Guyton.
Which is Target brand Tevin Reese.
Oh, Mr. Reese. Hey, I want to start a petition because the fact that he won a Biletnikoff over Marvin Harrison Jr. is a freaking crime. I don't. It's ridiculous. Just that they're in two different worlds. You got a guy who's running wide open because he's in this wacky offense. He never has to deal with anyone contesting. He doesn't have any real nuance to his route running at all. It just looked great on highlights to see a dude just blowing by defenders who gave him this ridiculous amount of cushion, but didn't realize that his thing is build up speed. And so giving him room to run is absolutely the worst possible thing you could have done.
All right. Well, let's get to our last one. And somebody mentioned it in the chat, but now I missed it. All right, last one here. Craig, before we get onto our sleepers, let's talk about Josh Downs.
Yeah, Josh. So it's another guy that I really like. Love his elite quickness and acceleration off of the line and in and out of his breaks at the top of his routes. Is pretty masterful itself. He will almost always be open in either man or zone if you give him a free release, because in man, if you give him enough room or enough cushion to kind of create on his own, he's going to cross you up. He does this really good, I almost call it like a little 2-step, or is this backwards 2-step. If he has to go, for instance, he's creating leverage and he's running an out route, he'll give like a little false back step. And it gives you the illusion that he's going to run a whip, but he doesn't. And he turns it into an out. Not really seen that before, but he's got it pretty much perfected. And against zones, he's going to find whatever opening there is, and he's going to sit in it. He's just got a really good feel for that on the field. He plays the ball in the air like a pit bull. I mean, he caught over 70% of the balls thrown to him in contested situations. So he's another guy who doesn't measure up from the size standpoint, but he plays bigger than that. Super crafty route runner, and he's quick enough to add an extra step or a fake. I mentioned that before his break to create additional separation, and he can still do that without throwing off the timing of the route. Great body control and ball tracking, consistent production for the last 2 years. He had collectively 195 receptions for over 2,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. So the Chargers love production. There it is. Gets no better than that, really. Also love his pacing as a route runner and his tempo to set up routes throughout the game. He'll run the same route like 3 times with 3 different paces at certain points of the route each time. So it'll be the exact same route, but he'll mix up the pace at which he runs it in different spots, and DBs are all thrown off because of it. They don't know what to expect. And because of that, he can run a full route tree, but he doesn't necessarily have to, just because he's pretty much perfected that. So it'll only get better as the years go on at the next level, and he, kind of grows that tree out a little bit. As far as some of the downside, of course, smaller body, probably going to be relegated to slot duty, although I'm not convinced he couldn't be a Z, but he's probably mainly going to be a slot guy. I think he had like 9 drops in 2021, but only 2 last year. But it's something to keep an eye on in his rookie year, although I think he has really strong hands. So I wouldn't really be too concerned about it. He's also quicker than he is fast. Now, he's not slow by any means. He just doesn't possess elite long speed, but he has enough to get the job done and make it happen. So not a concern for me there either. And as far as the overall grade, I have him around a mid-second rounder, and I've got Josh Downs at an 84.
Ooh. All right, Jamie?
Yeah, I also really like Josh Downs. I loved his 2021 tape. His role changed a little bit in 2022, which was a little bit disappointing. He was more of a deep threat in 2021. And I think the things that really stand out to me about Downs, and I don't really even need my notes for this because I just loved watching him play, is the way he plays the ball in the air. And Craig mentioned it. He's 5'10", I think, but he plays the ball like he's 6'5". He is springy. He can leave his feet at full speed and make a catch outside of his frame. He's a fantastic contested catch option. He is deadly in the red zone. It seemed like in 2021 in particular, he was making plays in the third and fourth quarter constantly. Third down, red zone. He was always open, always making plays. If North Carolina needed a play, Josh Downs was going to make it. And he made some amazing catches, not just leaping for the ball, but laying out, attacking the ball way outside of his frame and making diving catches. He is incredible. He is a fantastic route runner. Craig mentioned the pacing. He varies the pacing. His footwork is phenomenal. And he knows how to set people up depending on where his route is going. And he learns from routes and his route running, like Craig said, he learns how to set people up because he's paying attention to how guys react to certain moves. I was a little disappointed with his 2022 tape only because the role changed so much. He wasn't the deep option as much anymore. He was primarily in the slot, was catching a lot more short and intermediate passes. But again, if they needed to play on third down, he was the guy and he was making plays. I think Downs is a guy who, if you bring him in, not that I would want a potential first-round pick playing special teams and returning kicks and punts, but he probably has some special teams value because of his game. I think he could be, at the very least, a very effective punt returner. He is a lot of fun to watch. I think, some of those contested catches might not really be his thing at the next level because of how small he is, even though he does outplay his frame considerably. If you took his demeanor towards catching the ball and attacking the ball in the air and gave that to Quentin Johnston, oh my God, what would you
top
have?
5?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal. I'm a little lower on Downs than Craig just because the 2022 tape was a little disappointing, and I do think he's probably going to be limited to the slot, even though I do think you could create for him and he could create out of the Z. Definitely not going to be an X for sure. But I'm in an 82. So a little bit lower, but still somebody who I really like. Not sure that I'd necessarily want him in the first round because I think the Chargers would more than likely stick him in the slot and just leave him there. But if he's a guy who maybe falls into the second round, maybe there's an option there. But very fun watch, very productive, very consistent. He does everything well. The only thing that's going to limit him is his size, and I think a lot of teams are going to look at him strictly as a slot.
Yeah. Yeah, there are 2 guys in this class that I absolutely loved the kind of dog mentality when going up for the ball in traffic. Whenever there's a DB coming down on him, it's Zay Flowers and it's Josh Downs. I mean, you absolutely love how big they play for how small they are as wide receivers. You guys talked about a lot of it, but that's my favorite part of Josh Downs' game. And then the route running, I love the nuance and abrupt way in which he just uses every blade of grass on the field, the way he sets it up, the way he will hitch. The tempo is up and down. He'll hit you. Sometimes he'll rock you to sleep in a route. I love it. And the way in which the Tar Heels got him in motion really made him dangerous in space. And I think that's his role in the NFL. The size, he's got the fearlessness that because he's undersized, it's okay because he plays so big and he's not afraid to take a hit. It does help. It does hurt his play strength at times and as a blocker a little bit too. But yeah, I think a lot of like Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs could really add some special teams value as some returners too. So for me, I'm in the exact same range as Jamie. I have an 82, which is in the same boat as QJ in my rankings, but I've got an 82. This is a guy that I was really, really excited about. I had in the rankings, Tank Dell was our 6th guy. And you guys were like, guys, you got to put Garrett, you got to do Josh Downs. And man, am I glad you talked me out of having Tank as that 6th wide receiver. I really, really enjoyed Josh Downs, and I had him a lot higher than I thought I would because his rankings are kind of all over the place. Sometimes he's kind of getting like round 1 hype right now, like towards the end, the back of round 1, but he'd been a day 2 guy for most of this draft cycle. And I am just glad that we got to watch him. I am very happy with Josh Downs. So let's move on to these sleepers. If you guys want to, I'm going to I'll let Craig go first since this is our last one here. And let's go ahead and talk about Trey Tucker, Craig.
Another prop for you guys. This is actually, if you're familiar with the WB series of The Flash, that version of him. And if now you can't tell by now, I'm a big freaking kid, then so what? I don't care. I love my superheroes. And The Flash is also my favorite superhero.
And your Funko Pops.
Yes, clearly. I do. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm almost 40 and it, should I be ashamed? I'm not.
No.
Anyway. So yeah, Trey, human, nitrous oxide. I mean, like just speeding the ball. He won the state championship in men's 100 3 times while in high school in Ohio. So when we're talking twitchy, he's got that. The long speed, the twitchiness, but he's also really aggressive. He's an ultra tough competitor and he plays with the chip on his shoulder. And he's even really unafraid to play inside the numbers, aka the middle of the field, where Quentin Johnston wants no parts of. And we're talking about a dude that's 5'9", 182 pounds with like the shortest of arms, like 28 7/8 inches, and his hands are 8 5/8. So we're talking about just like a diminutive dude. I mean, as far as those measurements are concerned, as far as his ability to make plays, he's probably near the top of the class as a playmaker. I mean, he turns into a blur, whether he's in traffic or in the open field. And that basically means you want to get the ball into his hands however you can, whether it's through quick passes, screens, jet sweeps, and he adds that value as a return guy. I said this already. He's got elite top end speed, but it's also paired with equal acceleration. He's from 0 to 60 in no time at all. The second he plants his foot and goes, it's a wrap. So if you're getting hands on him, great. But if you don't, before he can get in the open space, it's probably going to be a house call. So outside of that, he does, like I said before, have small hands, but he still works to extend them as opposed to allowing himself to get the ball or allowing the ball into his body. So you got to give him effort. I mean, kudos for the effort there. It doesn't always work out, but he still makes the attempt, unlike some others. He's not going to give you very much positional versatility. He's going to be primarily a slot, and he'll give you high value as a returner. He's got a pretty good release package also, but he can't avoid being muscled around at the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, again, you're probably going to have to stick him into the slot and move him around. And he may be best utilized in more of like a spread heavy offense to get the most usage out of him offensively to where he can operate in more space. Again, he plays aggressively. He's not afraid to move around and make it happen in congested spaces. But, again, if you want to have him be an offensive weapon and a playmaker, the best way to do that is to give him as much room to work with as possible. And I have him with almost a mid 3rd round grade at a 74.
Well, okay. All right. I got mine up next, Jamie, if you don't mind. So I'll
go for it.
Jump in here. So reluctantly, I felt like there was a lot of guys on the back end of this draft class that I just, I didn't love, and I didn't want to put my name on any of them. But the one that I did is Bryce Ford Wheaton, and that's because he's an athletic specimen. 6'3", 221. He ran a 4.38. He's got almost a perfect RAS score. In fact, he was the 11th best RAS score all time among wideouts. So an elite tester, elite speed, really good body control, plays tough with the ball in the air. West Virginia set him up a lot with some quick hitters to manufacture yards, was a go-to target in the red zone. Also a pretty good blocker in the run game. The downside is he played in this abbreviated version of an air raid offense at West Virginia, so there wasn't a ton of variation in his route combinations. They just lined him out wide and let him run because he's got that kind of speed. He also didn't have a ton of college production. It was kind of up and down. The quarterback play wasn't great, but he still didn't put up a ton of numbers. But if you're looking for some day three wide receiver with elite speed, Bryce Ford Wheaton is your guy. He's got the elite speed, size, plays much bigger than he looks, and he's pretty tall. He's actually a little skinny, but he could obviously pack on some muscle if he wanted to. We'll need to work on a little bit of the route running. Again, add a little bit more muscle. But right now he's a vertical threat right away, and he's got some Pro Bowl type special teams value as a gunner. I feel like right away he could be an asset to your special teams as a day 3 guy. So this is my guy, Bryce Ford Wheaton. I've got a 60 on him, which is low 4th, so right into the 5th round, a day 3 guy. Jamie,
so
for you.
My sleeper is Jaden Reed from Michigan State. I, like Garrett, had a really hard time finding anybody I was willing to put my name on. I looked at a bunch of guys, a lot of whom couldn't catch the ball or couldn't run, so they got chopped off the list, and I wound up settling on Jaden Reed. And I think what I liked about Reed is he's a very, very productive slot receiver. He's a very high-level route runner, in my opinion. Ball skills are fantastic. He tracks and adjusts the ball very well, makes a lot of very physical contested catches. He's a very good weapon on slot fade, very productive on that. And the hands are great. I mean, he makes all kinds of contested catches. He's very physical at the catch point. Very productive. I think some of the red flag is the wrong word. Some of the knocks on him are he doesn't create a whole lot of separation. He isn't what I would necessarily call super explosive, and he's got kind of a limited catch radius because he's a smaller guy. And his production took a huge hit in 2022. I think he had over 1,000 yards and like 9 touchdowns in 2021, and his numbers fell off in a big way in 2022. A lot of that had to do with another terrorist at quarterback, but he still managed to produce on some level, and I think he's a guy who could develop into a very solid slot option for the Chargers if they want to go for him in the late day 2, early day 3 range. I have a 70 on Jaden Reed, which is a late 3rd round pick, but I think he's probably a day 3 guy, round 4, round 5, something like that. He isn't, like I said, he isn't super explosive or fast, but he just gets the job done. So solid player, somebody who I think could at the very least be a rotational piece in the slot, and punt return value. I think he had 2 seasons in which he averaged at least 20 yards per punt return. So he is productive on punt returns and could offer something there.
All right, let's get into these grades. And just so you guys know, the lightning round grades are evened out at wide receiver 4 between Josh Downs and Quentin Johnston with an equal 82.67 for both of them. How about that? Very interesting.
Interesting.
Especially since we don't share grades and I have to manually get our grades together live each time. So very interesting. All right. So Jamie, give me your grades. I don't know how many you watched, but go, bottom to top.
I think I have 12 on here.
Okay.
So the last receiver in my rankings, I think it's number 12, is Parker Washington with a 58. Trey Palmer is next with a 69. Jaden Reed at a 70 is next. Jalen Hyatt follows him at 74. Keishon Butte tied with Jalen Hyatt with a 74. Next is A.T. Perry with a 75. He and Cedric Tillman are actually tied in that spot with a 75. Marvin Mims is my wide receiver 6. with an 80. Josh Downs is my wide receiver 5 with an 82. Quentin Johnson is number 4 with an 84. Jordan Addison, number 3 with an 85. Zay Flowers, number 2 with an 86. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, number 1 with an 88.
All right, Craig.
Yep. So I started this process a while ago. I'm not gonna lie, and since wide receivers and running backs are kind of my thing, this is gonna sound a bit obsessive, but I watched 19 guys. I'm gonna start here with Charlie Jones out of Purdue with the 68. Jonathan Mingo at 18 with a 71. Got Raheem Jarrett 17 with the 72. Trey Palmer at 16 with the 73. Trey Tucker, Jaden Reed, and Tank Dell all in a 3-way tie with 74s. I hate saying this, but Rashee Rice is at number 12 with a 75, even though I really didn't like what I saw, but whatever. Jalen Hyatt at number 11 with the 76. We got A.T. Perry at number 10 with the 77, also tied with Cedric Tillman at number 9 with the 77. So ironically enough there, Jamie. Tyler Scott, 78 at number 8, tied with Keyshawn Boutte at 78 as well. So I could really flip them and have Boutte at 8, but doesn't really matter. Moving on to number 6, we got Marvin Mims with 79. Number 5, Quentin Johnston at an 82. Josh Downs at number 4 with an 84. Jordan Addison at 84. Number 3, Zay Flowers an 85 at number 2, and JSN number 1, 88.
Okay. Yeah, I've got 16. Watch some of the same guys. I'm a little lower on a bunch of them, but all right. So my sleeper, Bryce Ford Wheaton with a 60 is at 16. Sorry, excuse me. I don't know if I said 15 or 16. Rashee Rice. Yeah, man. Not me either. 67. Tyler Scott with a 68. I've got Mingo, Boutte, and Tank Dell all with 69. So that's 13 through 11. I got Jaden Reed.
You really gave Boutte a 69. You did that on purpose, didn't you? You tried to slide that in there.
You busted.
Oh. You sneaky man.
And that's our show. A.T. Perry, 71. Where am I? Oh, Marvin Mims, 73. Number 8, Jalen Hyatt, 75. His teammate, and in my mind, a better player. Cedric Tillman at 78 with number 6. Josh Downs, number 5, tied with Quentin Johnston. They both have an 82 at 5 and 4. Number 3, Jordan Addison at 84. Zay Flowers, my number 2 as well at an 86. And JSN with an 88, my number 1 wide receiver. And that does it for our grades. We are going to have a big draft guide with all of our overall players, and also broken down by every player we watched. And again, if you didn't hear a guy that you liked, like say Charlie Jones, who Matthew Stanley keeps trying to make Charlie Jones thing happen. We just didn't watch him. Sorry, Stanley. We just haven't watched him yet. So everybody we've watched, we've graded, and we will have a guide for everybody in Discord on the overall, and we'll break it down by positions. And then on Tuesday, the 3 of us are going to do a mock draft, and I don't know if we decided on time on that or not. I forgot, but either way, join us Tuesday, mock draft, and then join us Thursday, Friday, Saturday for the live draft show. Jamie and I will be there. Craig will pop on if he can. Matthew Stanley will be there. Daniel Stebbins will be there, and Michael Peterson will be there. Same crew will be there, and we might have some other surprises as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.